Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media and members of the media, visitors in the public tribune. Welcome to this public meeting number 7 of today, Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022. I would like to give a special welcome to the Honorable Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, Mr. Omar Otley, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 8 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the following members: MPs Pontiflet, Bryson, and Westcott Williams, and notice of absence from MP Melissa Gomes. Yes, I switched it around. The lateness, so they will be arriving late, MPs Pontiflet, Bryson, and Westcott Williams, and absent today, MP Melissa Gomes. At this time, we open the floor for notifications. Does any member have a notification at this time? No, none. Thank you. We have as agenda point for this public meeting a question hour. Questions from MP Heyliger-Marten directed to the Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor regarding the EHAS program and related labor agreements, and this is in incoming document 150 of the current parliamentary year, dated November 2nd, 2022. And we go over to the agenda point. The intention of the question hour, the so-called vragenuurtje, as we have borrowed it from the Dutch Parliament, is to create the possibility to interact with ministers. After the passing of Hurricane Irma, Article 69 of the Rules of Order was proposed in order to introduce the so-called question hour. During the question hour, only questions and answers will be given on the topic at hand. Considering that we have a question hour today and a request in for a question hour with the Minister of Justice, please allow me once more to elucidate on the procedure on the question hour. Some of the highlights of the question hour are the following. Questions to be answered during question hour by the Minister can be submitted from Monday through Wednesday during the so-called reading week or preparation week. The deadline is Wednesday at 5 p.m. The Member of Parliament submits questions to Parliament in accordance with Article 69 and further of the Rules of Order. This article states the following: to exercise their supervisory activities, each Member of Parliament may pose questions to one or more ministers without permission of Parliament. The Member of Parliament needs to specifically request that the questions submitted be answered orally in accordance with Article 69C of the Rules of Order. The Chair of Parliament decides on the sequence of the subjects during the question hour. This is laid down in Article 69D, paragraph 2 of the Rules of Order. Seeing the fact that in theory all 15 members can submit questions for the question hour, a selection needs to be made of which questions of which minister, of which member will be allowed for a particular question hour. The maximum on speaking time is regulated in Article 69D of the Rules of Order. The proposal was to allow questions from 2 different members to be answered each time, this to avoid exceeding the hour. How will this be determined? These 2 members are chosen based on date and time the questions were submitted to Parliament. What happens if more members submit questions? In that case, the Chair of Parliament will ask the members if their questions are still relevant and if answering them is still necessary. The invitation. The relevant minister is invited by letter, along with the questions posed by the Member of Parliament no later than the Thursday before at 12 p.m. Then follows the convocation. A convocation for the question hour, for a public meeting that is, will be sent out by Thursday at 5 p.m. latest. If the relevant minister agrees to answer the questions verbally, the questions will take place as scheduled on Monday. The Member of Parliament will get the opportunity to read his or her questions as submitted for a maximum of 2 minutes. This too is laid down in Article 69D, paragraph 3 of the Rules of Order. The minister is given the opportunity to answer the questions for a maximum of 1 minute per question. Again, laid down in Article 69D, paragraph 3 of the Rules of Order. The Member of Parliament is then given the opportunity once more to ask additional questions for a maximum of 2 minutes, also in Article 69D, but this time in paragraph 4 of the Rules of Order. The minister is given 1 minute then to answer each question, which is also in paragraph 4 of the same Article 69D of the Rules of Order. The Chair of Parliament then may, at his discretion, allow other members of Parliament to ask questions for a maximum of 1 minute per question about the same topic. This changes in paragraph 5 of Article 69 of the Rules of Order. The minister is given 1 minute again to answer each question. Again, in Article 69, paragraph 5 of the Rules of Order is dysregulated. During the question hour, no permission can be asked to hold an interpellation, nor can motions be submitted. So after this basic outline and information on how the Rules of Order, how the question hour works, we then go over to today. Today, Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022. We have questions that were submitted by MP G.S. Heyliger-Marten, registered under incoming document 150 of the current parliamentary year, dated November 2nd, 2022, November 2nd, for the Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor. These questions were submitted in accordance with Article 69 and further of the Rules of Order. Minister Otley was invited by letter number 54 of the current parliamentary year. Hence, in accordance with Article 69D, paragraph 3 of the Rules of Order, Member of Parliament G.S. Heyliger-Marten will read her questions on the subject to the minister and provide an explanation. MP Heyliger-Marten, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the Secretary General. Good morning to my fellow colleagues, and good morning to the Honorable Minister and his support staff, and good morning to those listening and viewing online or on TV. I have 2 minutes, so in brief, I would just like to say that the reason for requesting this meeting was literally to just seek clarity on the dismissal of the workers of EHAS, and especially the fact that 2 workers are busy seeking legal, taking it to court. I found it prudent to get some more clarity on exactly how the dismissals were done. And I then posed 8 questions to the ministers, and I will now be listing those questions. Question 1, how many persons were offered the professional service agreement to the work for EHAS program? Over which period did these persons work? How many automatic extensions were given on the agreements? Why were these agreements not executed with the public entity country St. Martin? What was the objective of these agreements? In other words, why was this agreement format chosen? And again, through you, Mr. Chair, in the opinion of the minister, can these agreements be considered labor agreements executed under civil law? If not, why are the parties called employer and employee? And under the current law, these agreements would constitute a labor agreement, and persons with more than 2 short-term agreements for a total of 24 months would be in permanent service. So does the minister agree with this statement? If so, why not? And my final question was that, were the agreements based on the standard format used in or by government, and has this been vetted by legal affairs? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten. I give the floor to the minister to answer the questions in accordance with Article 69D, Paragraph 3 of the Rules of Order. Minister Hartley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning once again to the viewing and listening public and to all the members of Parliament. I will proceed. Question number 1. How many persons were offered a professional service agreement to work for EHAS? Where's the pen? A total number of 35 persons were given a service agreement to work in the EHAS program. Over which period did these persons work? The program began August 2020, and a number of persons came to the program at various times, some early 2020 and some early 2022. How many automatic extensions were given? There was only one automatic extension given. Why were these agreements not executed with the public entity country St. Martin? We cannot execute agreements on behalf of the entire country. That's why there are CLAs, SLAs, as long as they fall within the frame of the law. What is the objective of these agreements? In other words, why were these agreements chosen to be written in this format? The objective was to create a service level agreement between government and those providing the service. The format was drafted as we know persons would be hired on a temporary basis to whenever COVID would end it. In the opinion of your ministry, can these agreements be considered labor agreements? It cannot be considered labor agreement. As stated in the report from the labor dispute, although the agreement stated employer-employee, the structure of the agreement was consultant-based. Example, submission of invoices. Employees do not submit invoices. All staff also agreed to handle their taxes and insurance. All constitute to an SLA. There's number 7, but I'll go ahead and do number 8 if you permit me, MP, and I'll read number 7 last. Were the agreements based on a standard format used by government, and has it been vetted by YZ&W? The agreement was based on a third-party operation, and YZ&W was involved in vetting of the agreement. Under the current law, these agreements would constitute a labor agreement, and persons with more than 2 short-term contracts for a total of 24 months would be in a permanent service. Do you agree with this statement? If so, if not, then why not? I do not agree with this statement. The statement above speaks about a short-term labor contract. The EHAS was based on a service level agreement. The government of St. Martin established this team, EHAS, as a direct response to the pandemic protocols brought on globally by the effects of COVID-19. Although the agreement identifies party as employee and employer, the government of St. Martin could not commit the team members to a contractual employee of the government known as civil servants. Both instances require compliance by the recruitment policy within government under P&O. And in addition to the LMR, the government, in addition to the above, does not have a function book or FTE placement for the EHAS team, making it not only impossible, but illegal to make a placement in this apparatus. The agreement signed by parties may have lent itself to the conclusion of employer-employee. This was in fact contradicted by the actions of that the parties agreed upon. 1. Payment for works executed. The EHAS team members on a monthly basis provided invoices based on work scheduled timeable and submitted them direct to their respective accounts. Core principle of labor law informs that an employee are paid a salary based on remuneration and labor agreement signed. The salary payment is captured via a payroll software with regulatory income tax, social premium, sickness insurance premium being deducted. Consistent actions taken by the EHAS team members lent itself to the conclusion that they have been aware of the true position, being that of a consultant nature and not an employee. The government, for the government of St. Martin. Those actions includes, amongst others, again, submission of invoice, acceptance of the clause of no medical insurance, acceptance of the clause of not withholding premium taxes, acceptance of non-participation in APS pension scheme premium taxes. Seeing that this is a service level agreement, parties can give notice at any time based on Book 7, 408 Civil Code. I encourage members of Parliament to refer to this book from the Civil Code that refers directly to service level agreement. If the agreement does not mention a notice period, then a reasonable notice period should be given into account. The article I am referring to speaks about service level agreement. And if, for the fact it was a labor contract, which it was not, I would just like to point, I think we often see and think of the word permanent, and that creates a rift. There's no such thing as a permanent employee, because there are ways and means in the same civil code that allows for the dismissal of permanent employees. According to Article 672 of the Civil Code, termination may occur on any day unless by written agreement. Another day has been designated for this. The terms of notice to be taken into account by the employer with the labor agreement, which on that date of termination has lasted for fewer of 5 years. 1 month notice is required. All admins have been given sufficient notice. I would like to also clarify the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the dismissal of the EHAS workers. There was no dismissal. Everyone signed, and it was a mutual agreement to part ways at the end of the project. Everyone agreed to part ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Otley. I now turn to MP Heyliger-Marten. You now have the opportunity once more to ask additional questions. Again, for a maximum of 2 minutes. The same is based on Article 69D, Paragraph 4 of the Rules of Order. MP Martin, Heyliger-Marten, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 minutes. Okay, here we go. Did the payment under these contracts exceed 50,000 guilders per year? And did, the government also stated that this team the government established this team, yet you state that the government could not sign these agreements. Under which regulations and authority were these contracts then signed? Who was responsible for the payments, even if under an SLE? Which mandate did the ministry have to sign these agreements, if not on behalf of the public entity Country St. Martin, for whom all government contracts are signed? And I think I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chairman. That's it.
Thank you, MP Heyliger-Marten. Minister, you have the floor. The last question was a bit confusing even to me.
Sorry. Which mandate did the ministry have to sign these agreements, if not on behalf of the public entity, Country St. Martin, for whom all contracts are signed? Which mandate did the ministry have to sign these agreements?
Thank you. The payments did exceed 50,000 in total, yes, over the 2 years. Under which regulation was this established? I'll group, if you permit me, question 4 and 2 together. Which mandate did the ministry have to sign this agreement? The EHAS was established and paid for out of the disaster fund. This was an emergency process, and EHAS was established to reopen our economy. The mandate was given by the Council of Ministers to the then Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor to sign and start this project to open the country. Who is responsible for signing? Myself now as Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, and before my predecessor. That'll be it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister. MP does any member of Parliament at this time have any questions for the Minister regarding this topic? I see 1, I see 2, I see 3. We begin with MP Westcott Williams, followed by MP Bryson, and followed by MP Emmanuel. MP, I just want to remind you, 1 minute.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the Minister and his entourage. Good afternoon to all tuned in, my colleagues, of course, and all tuned in to this meeting of Parliament. Minister Otley, thank you for the answers provided on this particular matter. In your answers, you stated that you referred to a matter being explained in the labor dispute. So is there such a document, and if so, can it be shared? You refer to as stated in the labor dispute. So is there such a documentation, and if that can be shared? Secondly, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister, in connection with this item, with this matter, the issue of the budget, the Minister mentioned it is from the disaster fund. Which disaster fund exactly? Where can it be found in the budget? And can we get a total overview of the cost as per the cost incurred by the government for the pandemic? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott. The time has been exceeded. Minister Otley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. MP Westcott, yes, I just concurred with the SG that this document can be shared from the labor dispute, the response that can be shared, so I will. Also, speaking of the disaster funds, every year government budgets for a disaster fund for anything that may occur, in which COVID-19 was the disaster for 2020. I must say that the disaster fund was budgeted at about 1.6 million to handle the pandemic. Now, based on budget cuts and restraints, we have a budget of 500,000 for the year as we end off. So it was 1.6 million for the year, and now it's down to 500,000 for the year, which has been moved under Ministry of VSA.
Thank you, Minister. The following MPs, Bryson, and then followed by Emmanuel, will ask their questions, and then the minister will answer both set of questions simultaneously.
Right. Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. Just also, thank you also for the answers to the questions. And I would like just maybe for the minister to also clarify, was the country not, was on? Red. It's on? Oh, sorry, I'll start over. Thanks once again, Minister, for the answers to the questions. I would like to also maybe get some clarity on what the situation was at the time. Was St. Martin not under a state of emergency during the time at which this whole EHAS was set up? And was that taken into consideration in the decision-making, contracting, and so on during that time? And can the minister maybe provide, he has mentioned before the establishment of a port health authority or some sort of thing. Is it perhaps an opportunity in the future that a more permanent structure can be created where even some of those can migrate back into such an institution to be set up by the government? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Bryson. MP Emmanuel has the floor, and then we'll go to the minister.
Okay.
Mike.
Let me do that, MP Westcott. Good morning to you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the Honorable Minister and his support staff. Just a few questions, Minister. In terms of the EHAS and in terms of the collection, can you give a detailed breakdown on how much money in totality was collected from the EHAS? And also, which insurance company or company was used for the EHAS program? In addition to that, how much money did go into the coffers of the government of St. Martin in relations to the EHAS? That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Emmanuel. Minister Otley, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. I move to the questions of MP Bryson. MP Bryson, what was the first question? Okay, EOC was deactivated at the time. However, the island, the country was still in lockdown. The ministry needed a way to reopen the country safely as possible. So as Minister of Labor, Minister Panafleck at the time, along with his team, developed a safe manner in which we can jumpstart the economy once again. It was no secret how the country was suffering during the lockdown. Yes, Port Health. This is also in the works. We are working on making Port Health an official department under the Ministry of VSA. Of course, it will not be something that is overnight. Everyone that signed the agreement for dismissal was asked this specific question and was notified that if they would consider continuing a relationship with the ministry / the government once Port Health is established. Everyone surprisingly said, of course, they would love to continue the journey as they understood this was of temporary nature. So that was the answer for that. When it comes to MP Emmanuel, the amount that was collected for insurance, I do not know off the top of my head. However, St. Martin, unfortunately, did not make anything off of the insurance. I would gladly get, if I can get the name before this meeting is done, I would say it here, but we did not make anything of the insurance. When it comes to the testing that was done with EHAS, I know MPS, between, based on the Excel sheet, St. Martin made 290,000 guilders from January to October based on the testing. That was that is for the government of St. Martin, 290,000 for January to October. Which I'll get the answer for you. I don't have it off top, but I'll get the answer for you right now. And if you permit me, once I get it, I'll say.
Thank you, Minister Otley, and thank you. There are no further questions from members. MP, we have time. MP Heyliger, we have some more time, so you can ask your additional question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the income from the COVID testing, did the government already invoice the airport for the amount that is there? And you said that the total was 200 and something thousand guilders accumulated for the, just for clarity, accumulated for the testing. And did government already invoice the airport for the amount? And what percentage went to government? What percentage went to the lab? And did the airport incur any fees? That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, MP Heyliger-Marten. Mr. Chairman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The breakdown was as follows. It was $125 per test. The collection was done by PGIA Commercial Department. Country St. Martin made $20 per test. PGIA made $25 per test, and HCLS Lab made $80 per test. We have not invoiced at the moment, as it was agreed that we would do a total invoice at the end of the project.
Thank you, Minister Otley. I saw Westcott Williams, did I see a finger? I did. Okay. So we'll go to MP De Weaver and then to MP Duncan.
But I'll answer it after.
And then MP Westcott Williams.
It's on, right?
Yes, it's also.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, colleagues, Minister, and your team. Thanks for being here. I know that when we talk about EHAS, there's a little bit of a confusion that happens. EHAS consists of two things: providing an insurance and also having workers here who was doing the job of vetting people as they come in. I know I have 1 minute, but I'm just going to make sure for posterity I say this once again. The persons involved in the insurance were Massey United, Guardian Group, and Enya. Guardian Group and Enya exist on St. Martin. They do their duties. We have insurance with them here. So it is not a foreign entity, but these are the people that made money on St. Martin, that were involved in doing the claims for everybody that came in that had an insurance to make a claim. These were the people doing it. So I suggest that when you want to find out the data of what's made, there's a conversation to be had with the insurance providers that are on this island on the Dutch side. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So that was more a clarification than a question, and we thank you for that. We have some roles changing around today. MP Duncan. And then MP Westcott Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the Minister and his support staff, and good afternoon to my colleagues. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to know if perhaps the ministry was working on a sort of comprehensive report after everything that has happened, you know, a possible guide to the future, avoiding missteps or creating best practices. You know, we often go through these experiences and then we don't compile all of the information in order for not only our people, but our those coming behind of us to learn from the mistakes that we have made or the successes that we have had. And so the question is just really to ask if the ministry is going to maybe produce a report, hopefully available to the public, on the lessons learned from EHAS over the last 2 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Ludmilla Duncan, MP Westcott Williams.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if the minister could go a little more in depth into the answer regarding the funding. The funding came from the disaster fund under the Ministry of General Affairs and was 1.6 million. Was the 1.6 million the budget? And if it was the budget, then how much of it has been used? And when the minister says that now that has been brought down to 500,000, what is the now? Is that 2022? So could we get a specification per year, the budget allocated to VSA and the cost, so the actual expenditures per year as well? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MPs. We've had questions, additional questions from MP Duncan and now MP Westcott Williams. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you. MP Duncan, we have did an assessment and report with PAHO. They assessed all of our port of entries, they assessed the EHAS program and provided information on what is there and what can be improved. This information was taken and put into our pot, for lack of a better word, to create the Port Health Authority that we are working on, which by law we should have Port Health Authority at every one of our ports of entry. When it comes to the disaster fund, indeed, the project started, it was budgeted at 1.6. Then as the year passed, it was decreased to 962,000, and then it went to 500,000 indeed for the year. For 2022, because there was a de-escalation process.
Thank you, Minister Otley, for the answers provided. The minister has promised some information or documentation, the labor dispute document. The minister had also promised the names of the insurance companies, but they were provided by MP Ludmila De Weaver. I don't know if the minister will concord that these are indeed. Yes. So you can confirm those are. Okay. So we have come to the end of another, we could say, successful question hour. I would like to thank the Honorable Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, the Honorable Mr. Omar Otley and his support staff for your participation and presence here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this question hour. I thank you all for your participation, and I hereby close this public meeting.